Right, and now recording. All right, welcome to the Forge Online Bootcamp. My name is João Martins. I'm a Forge developer advocate here at Autodesk, and today I'll be covering with you this session, the second day of our bootcamp, focusing on visualizing the hubs, the view hubs tutorial. Let me change my camera so I can look at you. All right, I guess this one is better, right? This is how it's going to work. We'll have 4 days, and in each of our 4 days will be divided into sessions separated by short breaks if you prefer, or if not, we can go straight to the next content to finish our example in a shorter way. During the session, we'll go through the steps to build our samples, and you can follow along. You can also submit your questions. Please use the Q&A or the chat window, and I'll add some extra contents and extra context on our APIs and our services. Between the sessions, in the short breaks, you can also post questions and grab a snack, drink some water, and use this time the best way possible, right? Today, we are doing the Hubs browser tutorial. We'll go into it in the next slides. Yesterday, we did a simple viewer, which is a simple app to upload models, translate, and render with the browser using the viewer library. Today, we are doing basically the same. The application is basically the same, but this time we'll take advantage of one of our cloud products, such as Autodesk Docs or the Fusion Teams. I'll be using the Autodesk Docs from the Autodesk Construction Cloud, and I'll be showing to you how you can grant access to a hub from your Forge application. Tomorrow, we'll add a dashboard into any of the samples that you build, either the one from yesterday or the one that we're going to build today. And in the last day, we are going to talk about configurator using the design automation to modify designs. All right, let's begin day 2. And this is the goal for our day, is a basic application to help you understand the basics of our platform and take advantage of the APIs to manage data. In this case, we are connecting with a specific hub, as you can see. We also have on the left side of our application a tree view to show the hubs, and inside the hubs the projects, from the projects the folders, and so on, until we can select the actual models, actual files, right? This is how our agenda is defined for this day. First of all, we'll have the introduction and setup with all of the prerequisites. We have the prerequisites of the Forge account. We have to create a Forge application. We have to also grant access to our Autodesk Construction Cloud Hub from our Forge app, and also the Visual Studio community version 2022 for this tutorial, right? We'll go with this version, this IDE, because I'm going to do this tutorial in .NET. We have parallel tracks for .NET and Node.js. This one will be focusing on .NET. We'll be using C#. If you want to code with Node.js, please go to the other one that is being done right now by my colleague Jaime Rosales, but I guess everyone is in the right place. I can see some familiar names here. So after that, we are going to configure the server and the authentication in the second session. Then we'll take care of retrieving the hubs, the projects, and all of the information associated with a specific product with Autodesk Docs. Then, last but not least, we are going to take care of the client side of our application, adding the library for the configuration for viewer, configuration for our tree of contents, and the whole user interface for our application, right? And let's begin the intro and setup first session. For this development, we are going to need a Forge account. This is the address to create a Forge account. And with the Forge account, after a Forge account, we are going to need create a Forge app under that account. And then after that, we need to provision access to ACC, Bin360, Docker, Fusion Teams through these, based on this app that we just created. To create an account, you must have an Autodesk, a Forge account, sorry, you must have an Autodesk account at first. So if you don't have it, you'll be redirected to create your Autodesk account. And as soon as you create a Forge account, you get full access to all Forge services for a limited time period. As of now, you have 90 days with enough credits to test all of our services. And with a Forge account granted, it's time to create the Forge app, register, and everything that I'll be doing after these short slides. All right. We also need the Visual Studio Community version 2022 with the workloads for ASP.NET and web development and .NET desktop development. I will show you the address to download Visual Studio if you don't have it already. And that's it for the first session. Enough with the presentation. Let's go to our tutorial. This is the tutorial that we will follow. Let me post the link to the chat window. And here is where we are right now. We need to create an account. And if you don't have it, you create as a trial account for 90 days with enough credits. After that, we need to create our application. So let's go. First, you need to log in. I was already logged in, but let me show you the full process. Once you log in, you need to go right here under your profile and go to applications. From the applications, you'll be able to see all of the applications that are created for your under your account. If you're doing this for the first time, you'll see an empty page here, and you just need to click on create an application. Let's call this application Bootcamp 2022 day 2. All right. After we create our application, we'll receive a value for client ID and client secret. This is really important. Those are our credentials that are going to be used for to generate our permission to grant access to our APIs, our services. And we also need to specify the callback URL. The callback URL is really important for this tutorial because we are going to use the three-legged authentication. So we'll go on the second session, we'll go through how it works and you'll see the importance. As of now, let's copy the content that is inside our tutorial right here. HTTP localhost port 880 API of callback. Let's go and copy here. And we have a new addition to this interface. Now we can add multiple callbacks for the same application. This is useful because the way the authentication works is that it's going to retrieve a code to this callback URL. So if you are using an application for debugging and also for another tool such as Insomnia, I'll be using Insomnia today in the third session. It's good to add a new URL and add a callback for Insomnia, for instance. And at the last time, in the last section of this creation of the application, we have the API access. From here, we can control which APIs our Forge app can have access to. So for instance, we are not going to be using reality capture today. So it is good. I'll leave it as is with everything selected because we're just testing, we're just debugging. But when you move to production, it's good to restrict the access so you don't have undesired consumption of credits under your accounts, right? Let me save the changes. Saving. Okay, my changes have been saved. And we are good to the second part of our introduction. Now we need to provision access to other hubs. And this gets a little bit different depending on the hub that we have. I see we have a questions. How many URL can I add to callback URL? That's a good question. I don't see a limit. I think you can just keep adding those. I don't know about any limits. So I'll ask our team and reach back after on our first break. I'll ask our team and reach with an answer. But as I know, we don't have a limit for those. This is really new. This is really recent. So going back to the provisioning, we have different methods of provisioning. For instance, if you want to take advantage of data inside Fusion Teams, you just need to use the three-legged authentication. You don't need anything else. But for Autodesk BIM 360 and Autodesk Construction Cloud, we need an extra layer. We have an extra layer of security. Only Forge accounts, Forge apps provisioned on a specific hub can have access to that hub. For instance, I have my hub, I have my Autodesk Construction Cloud hub or my Autodesk BIM 360 hub. If you create an app on your Autodesk, under your Forge account, you can't see my information right away, even though you use three-legged authentication with a user that has permission to my hub. You can only access that after I grant permission after I provision your Forge app under the account administration. And how that is done? This is exactly what we are going to do right now. You need to be first a project admin, and this project admin needs to go under the account administration. In the account admin part, we need to go to the BIM 360 admin and then under settings option. From that, we will be redirected to the BIM 360 account admin user interface. And inside that, we have the option to add a custom integration. And in this case, it will be a Forge integration. From there, we can specify if this Forge integration, if this Forge app will have access to manage the BIM 360 account administration, or if it only would be able to access the data, the document, have access to the document management. After that, we need to specify if I'm the developer or if I'm inviting a developer. Two options here. If I am the developer and the account admin, I will select next and then add the information about my Forge app. If I'm not the developer, for instance, you are the developer and you're not account admin, your account administrator will select here, invite a developer, and submit your email. And then you receive an email to enter your Forge app client ID. And then your Forge app will have access to this specific hub. All right, let's see how it works. I'm not using for this tutorial account that is my account that is account admin, but right here on this other tab, I have I'm logged with my account admin for this hub that we are going to be using. So we just need to go under the account admin part, then BIM 360 admin, and then under settings. This will open a new tab, sorry. And in this tab, we have the option custom integrations. As you can see, this hub have a lot of application, a lot of Forge apps added to it. So I'll add one more, and this one I'll grant BIM 360 account admin. I'll leave everything. I'll have access. I'll allow access to everything just for debugging, but it's good to limit when we move to production. And in my case, I'm the developer. If you're not a developer, you need to just select this one and add the email of the developer. As I'm the developer, I'm going to select this option. And right now, I need to specify my Forge client ID and a name for my application. The Forge client ID is a client ID from the app that we just created. We don't need the client secret. We need just the client ID. So I can add it right here. I need to mark that I have saved the account ID information securely. And let me call it Bootcamp Day 2, 2022, Day 2. And that's a good practice. I'll add my name here because Jaime probably is doing the same thing. As a good practice, we add the client ID in the app name. So it is easy to identify, oh, I have this app added in this hub specific. So let me just click save, and congratulations, your app is now active. As of now, this app can access this hub that I just added, all right? All right, we have granted permission, granted access, and now the second part, the other prerequisite that we need to grant is the Visual Studio Community 2022. You can download it from this address right here that I'm going to send on the chat window. And this will download the version 2022. Just click this button right here and grant that you need the both of workloads, the ASP.NET and web development and the .NET desktop development for the last day of our tutorial, where we are going to build a configurator. All right. Let me change my camera. I keep forgetting to change the camera. Sorry for that. And after that, once you have the Visual Studio 2022, you can check if you have both. Let me continue without code. You can check if you have everything necessary through the tools, get tools and feature. Yes, Arturo, I'm recording this class and this will be available on YouTube. You'll receive the links through email. If you have more questions. Okay, these two workloads right here, ASP.NET Web Development and Dev Desktop for .NET, right? We are going to be use .NET 6.0 as it is the long-term support version of .NET, and the same applies for Node.js. We always tend to use the long-term support version on our samples, all right? And with that, we cover the first part. I see some people here from yesterday, so I'd like to ask you if you prefer going straight into the second part with the setup and authentication, or you prefer a break, maybe a short break. Please let me know through the chat. What do you prefer? Continue, but I was here yesterday, already set up. All right, continue. So I'll keep moving. All right. Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. So let's keep moving. So now we'll cover the second part, server and authentication. Once more, we have the architecture of our application. It's a pretty simple, it's a quite simple architecture, and you can separate again in 3 layers. As you can see this diagram, we have the 4 servers where your data is stored. And let me change the camera. I keep forgetting. Now it's better. We have the 4 servers where data is stored, and you can access our platform and services. And the access is made, is controlled through OAuth 2.0, and we have a token-based authentication and authorization. We will be needing the client side and the server side, client side and server side. The server side will provide our static files, HTML, JavaScript, CSS, to the client side that the user has direct access. Through the UI of our application, the user is going to take advantage of the Forge APIs through the server side. The UI will call endpoints on the server side, and those endpoints will use the logic inside our server side to use the services from the APIs, the Forge APIs, always through this workflow for data management API, for instance. And the only exception is for the viewer when we need to load, to render a design for viewer. In this case, we need to provide the token, the authentication through the client side. We are going to download the viewer directly from the viewable, directly through the client side. Apart from there is always this workflow. Client side reaches a endpoint on the controller. It uses our static class, our Forge service class that you'll see in the next steps to connect with the APIs and return the result. We'll have two tokens. One one will be provided by the client side, and the other one will be used internally, only in the server side. And in this case, for this sample, it's good, we'll use the three-legged authentication. What is the three-legged authentication? In this case, we need to take advantage of a specific user. We need to use to manage our content in the context of a specific user. And the way it is done is through this process that is described right here on this diagram. First of all, the end user will access our application and we will have a button to log in. As soon as this user logs in our application, we are going to redirect this end user to consent to the requested scopes that we need on the Forge authorization servers. Inside there, the user is going to log in with his identity, his email, and his password. So this is entirely between the user and the Forge authorization server. The application don't have any access to it. And once the login is successful, the user will see everything that its app is trying to see. Depending on the scopes that we define, our app can have permission to manage the data from the specific hub, can have permission to only view specific data, and mostly anything that is provided through that have an API available. All right, it's always good to limit the scopes for exactly what we need. From there, as soon as the user consents with the required scopes, our backend, the Forge authorization server, is going to return to the callback that we defined the authorization code. With this authorization code, our app is going to exchange it through the post get token endpoint to have an access token. And this access token is valid for 1 hour to perform the modifications or the visualization to access the data in the context of this end user. The way it works, the three-legged authentication works, is that after 1 hour, you can use what we call refresh token to refresh this authorization. This is good because other than that, the user would need to keep logging in after each hour. So with the refresh token, it's only necessary the first time. So the first time the user log in, you receive the credentials, the authorization code, exchange it by a token, receive a token and a refresh token. After 1 hour, use the refresh token and receive a new pair of token and refresh token. And after 1 hour, you keep doing the same and having a valid token without the need of the user keep logging in. All right. The refresh token is valid for 14 days. So once you receive a pair, if you don't update those in time span of 14 days, it's going to be not going to be valid anymore. So it's good to always keep refreshing the token. Right? This is not a problem for us because we have a web application and we are going to test really short. We're not even going to need probably to use the refresh token. Now going straight to our application, we are going to initialize the project. The first step is for creating our application. We will do it through the program.cs where the application starts. And the program.cs is the entry point of our application, and it is responsible to register the startup.cs class. We are going to create the startup.cs class with the host builder with the main method, and it's going to handle the configuration of our app, including the environment variables, definition for static files, routing, and controllers. In the configure method, it's going to specify, we are going to specify how the application is going to respond for each HTTP request. And also, after the setup of our application, we are going to implement the logic and add the controllers for the authentication. After that, we are going to test how it works and see through breakpoints how this process works. It will be way easier once we begin testing. All right. So enough talking. Let's go to testing. And let me change the camera this time. All right, this one right here. Okay, so first of all, we are here. We already took care of the provisioning of our application. Now we can go to our tutorials, and this one is the Hubs browser tutorial. Here you can see a GIF with the whole app, the app complete working, and you can jump into the application setup. So in Visual Studio 2022, we need to create a new project. Let's start Visual Studio. And if you have questions, please submit those. All right, let's create a new project. And the template that we're going to use is the ASP.NET Core Empty. This is the one. You can filter by C#, all platforms, and cloud to see this one. And we select Next. Now we need to provide a name for our application. Let me call it Bootcamp 2022 Day 2. And I will place the solution and the project at the same in the same directory. We are using the .NET 6.0, which is the long-term support version, always a long-term support. And we're not going to select configure for HTTPS or anything else, as this is just a sample for debugging. It makes things simple. And then we are going to create our application. Let me see if everything's correct. Yeah, ASP.NET, select the name, deselect everything. Okay, it is loading. Nice. Once you create your application, you should see exactly this content right here. It's still loading. If you see more content, it probably means that you used the wrong template. So please create a new one, or maybe you can delete the additional content that comes with the application, but it's good to use the empty one for this tutorial. All right, so the next step on our tutorial is creating our folders. We have the controllers folders where we are going to store our controllers. So let's right click on the project name, select add, new folder, and we paste the name controllers. Now our folder for the models. This is where we're going to store the logic of our application. Models folder. And then the wroot folder. Wroot is where we are going to store the static files for our app. We now select add new folder. And as soon as you create this, it's going to change the icon, meaning that this is a common folder for static files in a .NET project. Now we need to add our SDK, our dependency. In this case, it will use the Autodesk Forge.forge SDK, and we use the most recent version. This is out of date. We are going to use the 1.9.3 for this tutorial. So let's right click on the project name and manage NuGet packages. Now select browse. Autodesk.forge. And this one right here. Use the latest stable version, which is 1.9.3. Select install it. Accept all of its dependencies. And we should be able to see under packages our brand new Forge SDK. We got everything sorted. Now we need to create our startup class, startup.cs class. Let's copy the name from tutorial, and on the project, we select add, we right click, select add, we add a new class, if this name, and now we have the same behavior that we have. We are going to repeat this a lot in our tutorial. We copy the content from our tutorial through this icon right here and paste it on our sample. What it is doing, it is acquiring the client ID in secret and passing this to it. We are going to pass it to the class, to the singleton class that we are going to use for the logic to connect to the Forge APIs. And we are also adding this case the Forge callback URL. It is really important. None of these environment variables can be null. If any of those are null, we can't continue with our development. That's why we're checking right here. We're also configuring the static files, routing, and controllers. Next step, we need to modify our app settings.development.json to use our credentials. So let's go on our projects under app settings.development.json, and we replace the content that comes by default with the content from the tutorial itself. Now we need to specify the client ID in secret. We have the client secret and client ID on the page that we just created, our Forge app. So this is the client ID. And now the client secret. I can click here to copy the client secret. And the callback URL is already provided as with the same value by our sample, with the same value that we just added on our app, Forge app, right? This one is this one right here. They should be exactly the same. If not, our server is not going to return the credential code. It is only going to allow the return of the credential code, the acquiring of the credential code, if those matches. This callback defined here is the same one that we use to request the credential code, right? And after that, we need to replace the content from our program.cs. I don't need to do this. I have this right here. Let's go on the program.cs and add this content right here from the tutorial. This is using the old template for .NET. .NET is using one with implicit usings enabled. It comes by default by the .NET 6.0, but we are not taking advantage of this as it is simple for our tutorial, right? We also need to specify the application URL. It comes, .NET projects comes with a random port. We need to use the same port that we use for our callback URL. So let's go under properties, launch settings. And in here, I need to replace this port with the one that we are actually using for this tutorial. And now we should be able to test our application. We don't have anything to show. We have no endpoint, no controller. So the only thing we can do is test if we are acquiring the proper endpoints. We can test it right here. Let's start debugging and see what we receive as answer. All right, now we're trying to get the client ID. Now we can see it, client secret, and callback URL. Everything's fine. And in our page, we have photo form, which is correct because we don't have anything to show. So, okay, our app is working properly. Not working properly, that's not the right term, the right phrase, but is until so far so good. So far is working as defined. The next step, we need to take care of the authentication, right? Once more, this is using the three-legged wolf workflow, and the workflow is the one that I described on our diagram. We're going to redirect the end user, retrieve the authorization, the code, the credential code, and exchange this credential code to a valid token, right? So first of all, we need to create the logic on our application, and this logic is inside our Forge service.cs class, and it's going to be stored under the models folder. So we can go under the models folder, select right click, select add new item. We'll add a class, C# class, copy and paste the name from our tutorial, get rid of the default content, and add the one that we have on our tutorial. In this case, we are specifying an internal token, a public token, and this time we also have a refresh token. So after 1 hour, we need to use the refresh token to receive a new valid token, a new valid pair of refresh token and access token. Right? We are defining the scopes for the internal token. With the internal token, you can read data and read the viewables. Viewables are the files generated by a model derivative translation. All right, we'll go with more details on that in the next sessions. The public token can only view the files generated by model derivative. It can only be used by viewer API to render a design. The internal token can read the data from the Autodesk Construction Cloud, with data from hubs, projects, folders, items, and so on, right? This class is defined as a partial. It means that we are going to improve this class using different files. This one is for the whole service. We'll add a file right now for the authentication, and then later we'll add another file for the data, for the data management API. Now let's add the file for authentication. To add this file, we once more select the right click the models folder, select add new item, class, copy and paste the name from our tutorial, get rid of the default content, copy the content from tutorial and paste right here. Here is how it works. All right, to retrieve the token from the three-legged authentication. First of all, we are going to, it's better to call it from the controller. Let's add the controller, then I explain it. But in here, we have the methods for refresh the token when necessary, to retrieve the token and the user profile that's going to be used by our application, right? Getting the token, we are getting through the three-legged API, and together with the refresh, we get one for the internal with the specific scopes. We have more scopes, and the public OAuth has less scopes. Now we need to add this class as a singleton, and this is done inside our startup class. So inside startups, we go right here after the verification if everything is present, and we're going to add as a singleton. This is important because we have only one single instance of this class for our whole server, all right? So if we have a token, this token will be used on all the calls. The same token will be used on all the calls from our server side to our APIs. And if we need to refresh, we refresh only once and have it available for all our app logic, right? Now we need the controllers. The controllers are the access point from the client side to the server side. To authentication, we have a auth controller that's going to be added with this class right here, authcontroller.cs, and they are added inside the controllers folder. So we right click the controllers folder, select add controller. We have the API controller empty, and right here we add its name. Once more, get rid of the default content, copy and paste the content from our tutorial. This is a better way to explain how it works to retrieve the token. First of all, we have the login. We are going to call this endpoint login, and this will be done on our application through the button login. And then it's going to return for us the authorization URL. And then our end user will be redirected to the authorization URL. To get the authorization URL, let's go to the Forge authorization URL. This one right here is a URL that is passed. The user will be redirected to Forge server together with the client ID of this application, the callback URL, and the internal scopes. It means by it's saying to our server, this end user is practically saying to our server that this end user wants to log in, to grant permission to this client ID, this Forge app, to perform actions on his behalf. And this is the callback that you need to send the code, the credential code, all right? And also it's going to tell, oh, these are the scopes that I need the user to consent. After the login, the user will see a page to confirm the consent, to consent with the proper scope that we are asking. In this case, we are asking to read the data from the hub that the user is connected, and also to read the viewables from the files that this user has access to. From there, after the login, the user will be redirected, the credential code will be redirected to this endpoint right here, to the callback that we defined. And it's returned with the credential code. From the credential code, we are going to call the generate token method. This generate token method right here is going to exchange the code to get the token based on the code that was passed by Forge authorization server, and we are going to grant to receive two tokens, the internal one and the public token, and then we are going to return this information, the public token, internal token, and refresh token with the expiration date to the client side. All right. After that, we are going to add cookies on for this client with all of this information. This is done this way for the as this is a quick sample for debugging, but for production you can integrate with a database to store the public, internal, and refresh token and so on, right? So as of now, we have everything prepared. We can start our application for testing. If you have questions, please. Let me take this opportunity to drink some water then. And we have nothing to show, which is right. We don't have a client side yet, but we have our endpoints. We can reach any of these endpoints. But for instance, if we reach this endpoint, we don't have the code and we can generate the code. The code must be provided by Forge authorization server. So let's mimic the behavior of our login button by calling the endpoint to login directly. And this can be done through this address right here. Let's call this. And here we have our endpoint. We are going to generate the authorization URL. And this is the authorization URL. You see, developer API Autodesk authentication. And we are going to authorize for this user with this client ID. All of the parameters, the client ID, the scopes, and the redirect are passed as query string parameters, right? So after that, the user is redirected to sign in with the Autodesk server. This is not our app don't have access to it, so it's important why this process is happening this way. So the app don't have access to the password of the Autodesk user. All right. So here I'll log in with my account. Oh, is this one right here? Oh, is this one right here? Add my password. And now, after I'm properly authorized against the authorization server from Autodesk, I need to give consent. I can see exactly what my app wants to do with my user. He wants to view my data, and he needs to view the viewables that I have access to render the designs that I have access to. All right, that's why it's important that you limit the scopes of your application to exactly what is needed, so the user can consent to give access to only what is actually necessary, right? So after I allow, it's going to return the credential code to my callback, and my callback is directing to this endpoint right here. Here I have my credential code, and now we're going to generate the token. Let's go inside this method right here. We are first exchanging the token, the credential code to the internal token, and then we are going to use the refresh token method to exchange to a token with less scopes, the public token. It always needs to be this way. You see what we're doing right here. We have first a token with more scopes, and then from this token, from this refresh token generated, we are going to use it to retrieve another token with less scopes. We couldn't do it the other way around, right? So that's always that's necessary because we are limiting the scopes after the second call, right? And then we are going to return the token. And now we are going to append, add cookies, add these tokens to the cookies of our application, right? We're going to add the public token, internal token, refresh token, and expires at. Expires at is important here. Once more, the token is valid for 1 hour and the refresh token is valid for 14 days. So you can't use this token right now, and you can come back after, I don't know, 2 days, for instance, and this token is not going to be valid. So your application would need to use the refresh token that's still valid to generate a new access token. And after that, it's going to redirect to the main page of our application. And we can't see nothing, but we can't see the cookies from our application. If we go under right here, the cookies, we can see that we have the tokens that we just acquired, all right? This way we know that our authentication is working properly for our application, right? And this is what we need for this step. Next step is browsing data from using the data management API. We have any other question regarding this first session? If you have questions, you can still submit on our break until you manage to go until this stage on your application. So you can just use the Q&A or the chat. Let me start the presentation once more. And that's it. Implementation logic, application setup, and then test it out just like I did. After that, we come back with the hubs and projects, how we have access to the content from Autodesk Construction Cloud, the hub that we got provisioned. All right. What about now? How much time would you prefer for a short break? You tell me through the chat window. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, what do you prefer? 50 minutes. Navid was the first, so he gives the call. 15 minutes, so I see you in 15 minutes from now to go to the next step of our app. If you have any doubts, reach us through Q&A or chat window. Right, let's continue with the third session of our tutorial. Sharing the screen once more. All right, sharing the screen. Now we'll take care of the hubs and projects through data management API, all right? Data manage, oh, let me change the camera. This one right here. Data management API enables you to access and upload files to our servers. We use AWS for infrastructure. We use the S3. We use AWS buckets to store your files, your designs on our end. And in Forge platform, we have what we call OSS, which stands for Object Storage Services. right here below, with two entities. We have inside OSS, we have buckets and objects. Buckets are just like folders, and inside these buckets you store your files. Through OSS, you can manage the two main types of storage. You can have only OSS, which was the context of the yesterday's training, where you had buckets and you did upload files to those buckets, and those were managed by your Forge application. Today, we are using the data management API to connect with content from one of the Autodesk cloud products, such as the Autodesk Docs for Construction Cloud, Paint 360, or Fusion Teams. Those products are using the OSS, the Object Storage Service underneath, but they have another layers of information to store those items in a different way. Those layers are visible in the product, and you can also reach those extra layers from the data management API. All right, from data management API connected with a specific hub, we have at top, we have access to the hub content, and inside the hub content, we have the next level will be related to all of the projects inside the hub. So for instance, I have my hub that I added this project, and my Forge app can access all of the projects inside those. Inside the projects, the next level will have the top folders of these projects. And inside the top folders, we'll have all of the contents. Inside the top folders, you can have more folders or items. An item refers to all of its versions associated. Inside a product such as Autodesk Docs, for instance, we first of all upload an item. Let's call, just for this example, let's call this file as fileway, for instance. If we upload another file with the same name, fileway, inside the same folder, we'll have the same item, but instead of creating two items with the same name, we have the addition of the version of that item. So in fact, what we have inside folders can be folders and items, and inside the items, we have all of these versions related. At the end, each version inside our hub, inside our folder, each version refers to a specific file stored in our bucket used by the product itself. So we have everything: hubs, projects, folders. Inside folders, we have items and other folders. And for each item, we have a reference to all of its versions. And each of the version will be one object inside a bucket, stored using OSS, Object Storage Service. And to access it, we are using the three-legged authentication. And the three-legged authentication is good because it limits our app to access only the content that our end user has access to. My Forge application is provisioned to view the whole hub. It is provisioned at the hub level, so it can access everything. When we combine this access to the access of a specific user, our token will have access to only the projects that this user can see through the product. Our token will have access to only the folders that this user can see through the user interface of the product. And the same is applied for the versions and the items. All right. So we don't need to, with a three-legged token, we don't need to worry about our app granting visibility to a user that he can see from the product itself. That's the great advantage of using the three-legged authentication. In this session, we are going to add the logic for browsing hubs from the top until the version, from the hub to the version, going through the hubs, projects, folder, items, and version. And then we are going to add the server endpoints to retrieve all of these information, all right? In this session, I will also like to take advantage of the multiple callbacks that you can add to debug our app for Insomnia. In fact, let's do it now. I have right here Insomnia already configured to test our application and to see how our app work, how our API, data management API works. As you can see, this collection is for data management API. And I have this environment right here to store the information on our client ID. So I'm going to add the client ID secret here, and Insomnia uses this callback. So this is the one that we are going to add on our Forge app in order to be able to take advantage of Insomnia for debugging. First of all, let me use this callback right here. Let me add it as another callback URL. Save the changes. And okay, now we can have access for Insomnia. Not yet. We need to also specify the client ID right here and the client secret. Now we can access our endpoints through Insomnia. Let's first of all retrieve the hubs. This is the first level that we retrieve from our API for our endpoints. So we just need to click send. This is the endpoint to retrieve the hubs, and I'm using the auth2 credentials. So right now I just need to to log in with my specific user. And in this case, you can see the difference from the credential that from the code that I was acquiring earlier. This time I added all of the scopes available. So the user is going to see this and say, oh, this application, as soon as I send allow consent, this is in Portuguese. So the application will have access to perform any task under my user, my specific user. So in here, you can see that we have the refresh token and the access token. Together with those, I have my response that I acquired. And inside the response, I have my hubs connected. In this case, I only have a hub in the Americas region. I have the US region. I don't have any hub in the EMEA region. So I'll see this error right here, but it's not actually an error. It's just saying that I don't have access to any EMEA hub. This is the information that we need. Through this, we are going to call the project's endpoint for this specific hub. This is the ID of the hub that I added my Forge app. And if you see, there is a B dot right at the beginning of the hub. Why is there a B dot? Inside data management is used across different products. Is used for, oh, let me just change my camera. All right, data management is used for multiple products, multiple cloud products of Autodesk. So every time we are using data management with the context of Autodesk Construction Cloud or B360, we need to specify this B dot prefix right here. So we copy this. Now let me add it to the environment variables, hub ID. It is already there. I always use this hub for testing. And now I can call the get projects endpoint. As you can see, I have my session, but I don't have the refresh token and access token right here. So this endpoint takes advantage of the hub ID that we just specified, right? So we can click send. We need to give consent once more because this is not taking the token. This is taking the token only now. And now we can see the response that we have. And in the response, I have my data, the information, such as my project ID, the attributes of these projects, and the links, the relationships, and so on. The link to the top folders, the reference. If you want to take advantage of issues from this project itself, you need to refer to this issue container ID right here, and so on, all right? For the project, let's copy this project ID, pass it as project ID, and retrieve the top folders. Let me clear this up. All right, and in here, I have all of my folders, the reference for all of my folders. I want to go through it from the project files folders, the top folder that I'm interested to retrieve my models, where my models are stored. So I can go right here. The URN, the ID is quite different. In this case, from now we have the reference to a URN. So we can copy this ID right here and add it in the folder ID. We don't have it. Okay, let me check, see if it is here. All right, I can add it right now. Let me add the folder ID. Done. And now I can go into the folder and get the folder contents, for instance. Let me clear this one. And let me just check if it is the same one. Project ID, folder ID that I added, finishing with Q, exactly this one. All right, this endpoint will return to me the folder contents. All right, and the folder contents, once more, can be items or another folders. Oh, was at the top. Thank you, Navid. I haven't seen it. Thank you very much. Let's click send it. And we should see all of the result. As all of our responses, our APIs, our endpoints, the result is paginated. So if you have hundreds of folders or hundreds of items, we'll need to be calling that recursively, all right, until we retrieve all of the content. As you can see, we don't have a next field right here. If the result were bigger than the page available, we'll need to keep calling this next. We'll receive the next field and we'll need to keep calling it. As you can see, in this folder, we have two contents. One is one folder that I use it for data exchange API, and the other is a project file subfolder. So let's go to this folder right here that I know it has some content. Let me change it, folder ID. You see, if I want to go recursively through different folders, I use always the same endpoint, this get folder contents, but now with a different folder ID, and I get the content inside that folder. So as you can see here, for the type I have another folder, and now I have one item. All right, this item will be make the reference for one specific file associated, and from this item I can have access to the endpoint to retrieve the item versions and so on. That will be done through through our Forge service class. One important thing is that I like to mention. Let's see if we have included here. Inside included, I have all of the versions also for those items. So for this item, for instance, I have only one version, I guess. So I have the reference for the version 1. I can see that there is a version for the type versions, and if you go under storage right here, we have the ID, which refers to the exact name that this item, this version has inside the bucket. So we have all of these layers, the item with the name that we see from the UI, but under the hood, that file, that version has this GUID right here as the name, and this is the bucket that is being used by Autodesk Construction Cloud under OSS, right? So if you wanted to download this file this will be the reference to download the current file. We're not covering this in the sample, but it's always good to know that we have reference for all of those from the API. All right. Now going back to our tutorial, if you have any other questions, please submit it through chat window or Q&A. Now let's go back to the data browsing. I already explained it, the different layers that we have, and under the hood, we have the object storage service storing our files as objects inside buckets from AWS. Right now, let's implement the data management logic on our application through this forceservice.hubs file. And we add this file inside our models folder. So we can right click the models folders, select add, new item. Now we select a class, paste the name from the tutorial, get rid of the content from the tutorial itself, get rid of the content from template, copy and paste the content from our tutorial. Here we have the logic to retrieve the hubs, and we're going to add each hub to our user interface to retrieve the projects, another endpoint to retrieve the contents, right? The contents can be items or another folders. And if we select items, we have another method to retrieve the versions of a specific item. To retrieve the versions, we need the hub ID, project ID, item ID. To retrieve the contents, we need the hub ID, project ID, and the folder ID, the parent folder. And to retrieve the projects, we need only the hub ID. And to retrieve the hubs, only the tokens. We also need to add the server endpoints, the controller for this logic. So we go under our controllers folder, right click, select add controller from the empty template, api.net core empty. We paste the name, get rid of the content from template, copy and paste the content from our tutorial. As you can see here, we have multiple endpoints. The first endpoint to retrieve all of the hubs. Then we have endpoints to retrieve all of the projects, endpoint to retrieve the contents and the versions. We have a relation of one endpoint for each one of our methods under the forceservice.hubs.cs class. And now we are able to retrieve content. And we can check it out from, we don't have the user interface yet, but we can check it through the endpoints, mimicking the usage of our buttons inside our application. Let's start debugging our application. And right now, it's all good. We don't have anything to show. We have nothing to show, and we don't have the cookies, the token inside the cookies. Let's go to the application. So we first of all, before calling the GitHubs, for instance, endpoint, we need to obtain the token. So we need to do the same steps. Log in. allow, give consent to our application, and now we receive the credential code, exchange it to a token, and send it back. Okay, now that we have it, let's just check it. Now that we have it, everything is here. We can't retrieve the hubs, for instance. Let me see which one he's using. Navigate to HTTP. All right, he's saying to retrieve all of the hubs available. Let's go. Let's add a breakpoint on our hubs controller. It's going to reach, we are going to stay right here. This one is good. And we retrieve the tokens. Now we are going to return the hubs. And this is taking advantage of our API. We are always using the internal token is the token that has the permission to read the data from our hub, our specific hub. And then we have the response. Inside the response, we have all of the hubs available. We are going to add a new hub. This is the one, the name is Developer Advocacy Support. And this is the only hub that we have. So we are going to return it to our client side. All right, this is all the metadata from the hub. And I could do that for all of the available endpoints that we have to retrieve the projects, to retrieve the folders, just like we did on Insomnia, at Insomnia, all right? So with that, we have all of our server side ready. And next step, we need to add the client side, the viewer, configure the viewer and the user interface of our application. I still have to answer your question. I just asked it for my colleagues, and as soon as I have it, I will post it. Ronald, how many URL can I add to callback URL? Apart from there, do we have any other question regarding these methods? All right, and what about now? What do you tell me? We need another break. Do you want to go and finish the app? I'll leave you some time to manage to complete these perform these tasks. How many minutes do we need right now? 50 minutes, 30 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. Navid is needing always less time. All good, man. What about the rest team? We are working as a team here. Please tell me anything. Tell me something from chat window. 10 is fine. Okay, so I see you in 10 minutes and then we finish our application. If you have any questions, any doubts, just let me know through chat or Q&A. See you. Share screen. And now we move to the final step to build our application. Now we are going to take care of the client side, the logic for using viewer against the files, for the items, the versions inside our hub that we have access as the user logged in, and render those. Now we are going to add the viewer logic through the viewer.js file. We also have a sidebar. And why do we have this sidebar? Because we need to have an interface so the user can select which hub he wants to read data, which project he wants to query, and which folders, and which items and versions, and so on. So for that, we have also a JS file for that logic, and we have the main.js for the whole application. The buttons that we need to sign in, sign out, and the structure for the viewer to load the viewer in itself, right? We have also the HTML page and the styles for the index.html and the main.css. At the end, we are going to test it out, and we are going to also add an extension, the same one that we used yesterday. And yeah, with that, you'll be able to leverage this app, including tomorrow for the bootcamp regarding the dashboards. Let's go do it. Let's get to it. Next step, viewer and UI. First of all, the viewer logic, and it's done through this viewer.js file. We need to add this file under our wroot folder. Wroot folder contains all of the static files that are going to be sent to our client side. So I just send JavaScript right here at viewer.js. Oh, it took a long time, strange. Now we copy and paste the content from our tutorial. Here's where we are initializing the viewer and loading the model. We have the getAccessToken function method. This method is going to reach the only API, the only endpoint that we have on our server side on our authentication controller to retrieve the public token. And this is the only one used by client side directly. We have also a function to initialize the viewer based on the container that we are going to add. And we have also a function to load a specific model. We are going to initialize the viewer as soon as our application starts, but we are only going to load a model when a user, of course, select a specific model. So from the selection on the tree that we are going to build, it's going to call this load model function. We also need the logic for the sidebar, the tree view containing all of the layers of information that we have: hubs, projects, folders, items, and versions. So we add a new item. Once more, it's a JavaScript file. So we add the name sidebar.js, copy and paste the content from our tutorial. In here, we have basically the methods to create a new node inside our tree. We have a method to get the hubs, get the projects, get the contents, and the contents can be folder or item depending on the ID that we receive from the API. We have the endpoint to retrieve the versions and the function to start the tree, the tree that we have with all of these layers of information. We are using this Inspire tree library right here. This is the only external library that we are going to use in this tutorial. We can check it out here from inspiretree.com, and in here we have the full documentation and examples and how to install it and so on. Feel free to read through it, and maybe you want to improve or change anything from the sample code that we are going to build, but we are doing it in a simple way, and in a way that this data field right here is a function that's returned every time we expand one node. So for instance, if we have, at first we only have the nodes for the hubs that we have, and this hub should have as child nodes all of the projects for this hub. So as soon as we expand it, we are going to call this data function, this callback function, with the hub token. So we are going to fall into this case right here, where we're going to retrieve all of the projects and after retrieving all of the projects through the get projects function, we are going to create one child node for each project found, and the same for the folders, for the items, and for the versions. We are also adding specific behavior when a specific version is clicked. If you click on a node that is referring to a version, we are going to render this design inside in the browser using the viewer and the translation that was done through the model derivative API. We also have the main.js with the application logic. So one more JavaScript file, add new item, JavaScript file, main.js, copy and paste the content from tutorial. And in here, we are first of all trying to retrieve the profile of the user logged in through this endpoint that we have. This endpoint we specified at the beginning of our tutorial. Get the profile. Oh, sorry, I'm looking for the logic. Here is the endpoint to retrieve the profile. And if it is unauthorized or anything else, we don't have a token actually, is no, we are going to return authorized. And then on our logic, we are going to add the login button and change the text of the button to login actually, and use the specify as a callback for this button being clicked the endpoint to log in the specific user. If we can log in, if we can check we retrieve the profile, then this answer is going to be log out. This button we have the text log out, and it's going to have as a callback the endpoint to log out a specific user. All right. We are also initializing the viewer through init viewer and the tree with all of the hubs, projects, and so on. We also have the style for our application. And here you can add new item, style sheet. Get rid of this content, copy and paste the content from our tutorial. It's pretty simple. It's good to mention that here we are defining the icons for the hubs, projects, and items and versions and so on. Apart from there, we have control over the sidebar, font family, the preview, and so on, the headers from the style for our page. If you want to change these icons for each of these items, this is the place to go. You can use any one that you prefer. And we also need to create the structure of our page through index.html. Get rid of this, add the content from our tutorial. All right, and here we have a reference for our JavaScript files, including the main.js. We need to specify the type as a model, as it's using ECMAScript 6, so we are importing different functions. So we also have the space for the sidebar and the space for the viewer itself for the preview. We are adding the inspired tree library right here, and we are also adding the Spire tree minified right here. And one other important thing that we are doing right here is the viewer.js and viewer.css. As I said before, but for those of you that didn't follow the training of yesterday, Every time we download the viewer, we reference the viewer library, we need to specify the version. In this case, we are using 7 dot star, 7 dot asterisk. So every time we use this case, the star, we are specifying that we want to use the latest viewer version. The latest viewer version in this case, as of now, is the version 7.76, I guess. We can see it through the documentation if we go under viewer. Change history. 7.76. This is the most recent version. So doing like that, leaving it like that, we'll always use this version. So as soon as we release a new one, this application will automatically use the version that got added, right? This is good for debugging, for development, but once you move to production, it's good to fix the version with the latest one that that got used on your development, so you don't have your app showing bugs or not well tested against the latest library, right? So good for development, but for production, fix the version of viewer. And with that, we should be able to test our application. We also have the fave icon and the logo. I'm not going to add those, but feel free to download and add those in the application, or replace using one of your company, of your preference, right? Let's start debugging. Oh, let me drink more water. I keep forgetting to change the camera. This one's better. Oh, this is a good tip. This works just fine for me. If you have a bottle of water this size, it's good for you to drink at least this amount of water each day. So for those of you that have problem drinking a lot of water each day, like me, it's a good tip. All right, now we have our interface, Hubs browser. This is the space for our tree, and this is the space for the viewer. As of now, we are not logged in, so we can't see anything. As soon as we click login, let me add a few breakpoints right here. Oh, they are already here. We can see the same steps as before. Get authorization URL, redirect the user to the authorization URL. Now I need to log in, and I'm connecting directly to the Autodesk authorization server. So let me log in with my account. And I need to consent that this application will be able to view my data and to view my viewables. After that, it's going to return the code, the authorization code, to my callback to my server. It's going to generate the token and redirect to the main page of my application. Inside the main page, we have the whole logic to get the user profile. Where is it? To get the user profile and obtain the first hubs, initialize the viewer, and so on. Oh, it stopped it. Quite strange. Let me continue. Before I continue, let me add a few breakpoints through Visual Studio. If this is Visual Studio that we get. All right, let me continue. Now we are trying to retrieve the profile of the user. So the profile is through the authentication controller. It's going to return right here. It's going to use the logic to obtain the tokens and then get the user profile. I succeeded to retrieve the user profile. So I have my user ID. User ID is used in a few endpoints from specifically for ACC and B360, the email, username, and so on. I'm going to return it and use the name inside my application. After that, on our main.js, we are going to we just set the login button to log out. Actually, I'm going to initialize the viewer and the tree that we have. Once we initialize the tree, we'll have this function right here being called to obtain all of the data and store it inside this tree that we have on the left side of our application. If I click this expand button on the hub, this is my hub, the only hub that I have access with this Forge application. If I expand this button, I can see that this callback is reached, and in this case we'll have the case of a hub. So we are going to retrieve all of the projects associated under that specific hub. And once more, only the projects that me as João Ornelas, you can see here, João Ornelas, have access to. I will only be able to see the projects that I have access, although this hub has more than 100 projects. And from the project itself, I should be able to retrieve all of the top folders. In this case, I have for the field folder and also the project files. My files are here, so I can expand this folder. In this case, I will fall under the folder case, the get contents case. And after that, I'll have the contents of that folder. From this top folder, I have these two folders. This is the same structure that we went through using Insomnia. And what is important is that we don't have an endpoint to return directly the whole structure of this hub with all of the projects, all of the files. If you need to call that, if you need to retrieve that, you need to call these endpoints, these methods recursively, right? This is a question that people ask frequently, so it's good to mention. We also have a verification as soon as we click on one specific node. So let's expand project file subfolder. Now we'll have once more the folder, and I can see all of my contents. And here I have a different icon. It means that these are related to files, to items. So if I expand an item, I will fall under this case where my token is referring to, my node is referring to an item, and I will retrieve all of its versions. In this case, this sample is returning the date of that this version was added to Autodesk Construction Cloud. You could add the version name or anything, the version like V1, for instance, just by changing the property that is acquired, all right? And if I click one element, let's click first on this top folder right here. I have the verification. As this token is not referring to as this node is not referring to a version, it is from a folder, I'm not going to call this on selection changed. But if I click on a specific version, I'll call this function and I'll load my viewable through viewer. So these refer to a viewable that I can retrieve from my hub and render inside my application, inside the browser. All right. One step we have here, as you can see, we have IFC, NWC, and RVT files inside my hub itself. But these, as I specified in the training of yesterday, these viewables are generated by model derivative API. What happens under the hood is that as soon as a user uploads a file to Autodesk Docs, Bing 360, or Fusion Teams, mostly Autodesk Docs and Bing 360, the product automatically call the model derivative API and translates these files to generate these SPF. What viewer uses to render the design in the browser is the format called SPF. So the product itself automatically translates these input formats, and we are just using the translation that were done by the product to render the result in the browser application, in a custom application. And in here, we can take advantage of the model, the extensions that we have available by default, the properties of this design, and so on. All right, we can see all of the files, the items that I have access as a user from the user interface of the Autodesk Construction Cloud. All right. One extra thing, we don't have any extension added to this application. As you can see here, as soon as we initialize the viewer, we are not adding configurations, like adding an extension that can be useful for our application. If we go under the tutorial of yesterday, we had this configuration to add the document browser extension. And we can do the same for this application. It's just a matter of adding this configuration as soon as we initialize the viewer. We can, for instance, copy this content right here and add it right here. This way, we'll have the document browser extension added on our viewer. We're just going to need to log in once more. Let me remove these breakpoints. They serve their purpose, but yeah, we don't want that anymore. I guess I have a few of those, right? main.js. All right. Now we should be able to move without interruptions. Now we click login. Oh, at this one. Now we can click login. This is going to redirect us to the authorization server. My email. I consent with the scopes that this app is requesting. Oh, I have another breakpoint. Oh, there's another breakpoint right here to list the hubs. And right now, at the beginning, I can see my hubs. If I expand, I can see my projects. If I expand the top folders, expanding the extra folders, subfolders. Now I have my items. And inside each item, I have all of the related versions. And if I load my viewable through viewer, I can see my extra extension that I just added, document browser extension. Let's just leave it a few seconds. Okay, it is loaded. And through the document browser, I can go through the different viewables available for this file. And as this translation was done through Autodesk Construction Cloud, it automatically generates the viewables referring to the different phases of the file. We call it the generate master views. Let me go with a few details of this translation. The endpoint that the product called automatically is an endpoint to translate a file through Model Derivative API. If you go under the Model Derivative API, we have inside jobs, the post job start translation endpoint. And for Revit files, input file is RVT. We have advanced options, for instance, to generate master views. So this is set to true on the product. So we have the master views available, including those views for the phases that the model has. And I can go through each of those, and even for each of those planes available, the 2D views available for this file. Now I'm in the context of the 2D view, and I have those same elements with those same properties from the previous 3D view that we have above before, right? And if you want to see more extensions, we have through GitHub a handful of extensions and with the source codes for you. If you go under Autodesk, if you search Autodesk Forge GitHub on Google, you can go under the repos and find the extensions. Here we have lots of extensions, and you can also test those live right here. Let me use a different one than what I used yesterday. So, one that I like is the transform extension. Let's wait for it to load. Transformation extension. As you can see, every time you translate any of the supported models, supported files, using model derivative to render in the viewer, they are generated, we generate all of the meshes, the textures, and the metadata from each of these elements. And we can interact with each of these elements, if it's geometry, its material, and also its metadata. Through this extension right here, we can, for instance, modify the position of one instance, of one element inside our model. For instance, I can do this. Or I can check how this rooftop would look without this grass. Or any transformation can be done on any instance of my model. Cool, isn't it? But this is not persistent. This is just when I'm looking at it right now. If I reload the model, I will see the original positions once more, right? So that's it for the training of today. We build a sample. Everything is done. You now are able to take advantage of your data from Autodesk Construction Cloud, Fusion Teams, or BIM 360 in the context of a custom application and taking advantage of the three-legged authentication workflow. Tomorrow, we'll have the dashboard tutorial. Let me change my camera. Right here. Tomorrow, we have the dashboards tutorial where we take advantage of any of the samples, the one we built today or the one we built yesterday, and add custom extension, add dashboards, and you see that you can add any library, any dashboard from any library supported, and it's quite simple. And on Friday, the last day of this bootcamp, we'll take advantage of Design Automation API to modify our designs, translate the resulting files, and preview the files generated. All right? If you need more help, you can count on us through Stack Overflow using one of the tags referencing for reference one of the APIs that you are using. You can also get help through email at forge.help@autodesk.com. The queue is the same, and we also have different events. You can expect after this event, you can expect the links of this recording, the slides, and a survey link. Please submit your feedback, what you like, what you dislike about this training, the format if it's not good, and if you want to take your newly acquired skills to the next level, we have the accelerators, lightning talks, and the blogs. Let me go to the events actually. If you go under the events, community, all events, we have, for instance, the coffee break, virtual coffee break. I guess it was today, the coffee break. Every 2 weeks, we have a coffee break, mostly on Wednesday. And no, I guess it's next week we have one. Let me check. Yeah, I guess we have one next week. Next week we have a coffee break, and it includes the whole team, our global team on this coffee break. We have also the doctoring, where you can schedule a time with any of the developer advocates to go through your workflow, to take advantage of the different expertise that our team have, or even business questions. Anything is valid here. You just need to find the person depending on the services that are specified right here and the time zone that's appropriate for you. And you also have the accelerator. Accelerator occurs almost monthly that we have. Sometimes we have more space between accelerators because, for instance, right now we are close to the event on the Autodesk before Autodesk University, such as this one. But after that, we have one virtual and on-site. We'll have Kansas City this time. And the way it works is you submit your proposal. You just need a proof of concept to work during that week. And if you are selected, you can take advantage of the whole team of developer advocates to help you build your solution, right? Anything's valid here. You just need to register and hope for the best. At last day of the accelerator, you will be showing your solution to the whole team if you like. If not, you can also record for the team to look at it later. All right. And the great advantage is that during that week of the accelerator, for the teams that are participating, we have a support of 24 hours. So anytime that you submit a question, you have someone there to cover you. All right. And we also have the hackathon. Next week, we have a hackathon. If we go under the Forge at Autodesk University, we have a blog about the hackathon where you can submit, you can subscribe, register for this hackathon, and you can choose any of these challenges to build the application using Autodesk Forge platform. And if you win, you can win a really cool prize. It's really cool. I'm not just trying to get you that. The prizes are really good. So that's it. That was the message that I wanted to share with you. And that's it. I'll leave this space open for a few more minutes if you have any questions. If not, thank you very much for your time, and I hope to see you in the next bootcamps and next event, hopefully in person next time. All right. Thank you very much, and see you.